Next amendment. Mr. Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Boyer Amendment number 2. Now, this is an amendment I think we can agree on, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve a point of order.
Oh, now.
Before we talk about agreeing to the amendment, let's have it presented. Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 1256 offered by Mr. Boyer of Indiana.
Without
At
objection, the amendment will
I.
be considered as read. The gentlelady from Colorado reserves a point of order, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana for 5 minutes.
This is an amendment that I would refer to as the Fire Safe Cigarette Amendment. Today, 22 states, plus the District of Columbia, have implemented fire-safe cigarette laws, and additional 15 states have passed fire-safe cigarette laws which have not yet become effective. The amendment I offer today highlights the effectiveness of the New York fire-safe cigarette standard and sets it as a ceiling for other state fire-safe cigarette regulations. New York was the first state to require that tobacco companies sell self-extinguishing cigarettes, and according to the Coalition of Fire-Safe Cigarettes, deaths caused by cigarette fires declined dramatically in New York State in the first few months that fire-safe cigarettes were mandated there in 2004. The use of cigarettes with proven reduced propensity to ignite other materials will save lives and offer the best opportunity to achieve significant improvements in fire protection. The New York State has taken the lead on this important issue and has set the effective standard for others to follow. So probably the best way to help, I'm going to hold this up. If members can take a look at this, this is a roll of tobacco paper. And what I've done here is I took a pencil and I darkened the areas where really there are lines that are set. If you could look at the paper, they're really where the paper is less porous. So what I did with a pencil, it was highlight the areas where it's less porous. So what happens is, hello? Look at this for a second, just for a second, please. Where it's the tobacco paper gets rolled like this, which means every certain point there's a less porous area of the paper of the cigarette. So when it begins to burn down, it begins to self-extinguish. It is a great standard, and I think it's one for which the states should be adopting, and I hope to set it as a ceiling, and that's the purpose of the amendment. So thank you very much.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm trying to figure this out. Because I think what you say makes sense. The New York standard is a good standard. Many states have adopted it. If you made it as a floor, then it would require all states to abide by this standard. But you want to make it as a ceiling, and that just means states. See, states are moving on this, maybe slower than you'd like. Would you be willing to make it a floor? That they all states must at least have the New York standard.
Would the gentleman be willing to accept the amendment, and I'll continue to work with the gentleman?
No, on the basis that I'm suggesting.
Will the gentleman be willing to accept the amendment right now, and I'll be willing to work with the chairman?
Well, I'm willing to accept the amendment if you make that change.
Well, the New York standard is such a good standard, we shouldn't try to go beyond it. I'm trying to say,
Well, we may not.
I want to be very delicate about the federal preemption. You brought that up to me, so I thought, well, all right, what's the best way I can draft this amendment in a manner whereby the New York standard is a standard that is utilized by the states?
Well, my view generally is if states are doing their job of adopting standards, we ought to leave them alone rather than preempt them. But your argument is that, well, a lot of states have adopted this standard, some states have not. So I could see the argument to say that we ought to at least have this standard. But if states are working on the problem, I wouldn't want to say they could never adopt a standard that's stronger. There may not be a standard that's stronger. But I don't want to preclude states from doing their job of protecting their own citizens. So my suggestion to you is let's make this the federal standard, but not preempt the states if they go stronger.
He's advocating a California tailpipe standard amendment. That's what he's doing.
You want to create the federal standard,
Not a ceiling.
I want a floor rather than a ceiling. You want a ceiling. Do you want a ceiling, or did you want everybody
well, if you want the New York to be the federal standard, I'll go with you on the New York as a federal standard right now. Done deal.
Without a preemption.
No. Let's make that the federal standard. Make it the federal standard, and we'll continue to work together. Henry, come on. We've had enough good discussions among ourselves that we can work this out.
Well, let's withdraw it and work it out before we put it in the bill, because I'm not ready to preempt all the states.
Then, if I withdraw, do you want me to redraft the amendment in which this would be, that we would use New York as the federal standard?
No, I want you to withdraw it, and then you and I work on something that we both can agree on.
We haven't agreed on much yet today.
You're making it hard.
Well, but you know, I still want to set a ceiling. You want to set it as a floor. We're pretty far apart.
Okay, well, then I oppose the gentleman's amendment.
Well, now wait a second. No, I'm serious. We have an issue here, and I think somewhere we can find a common ground on this. I'm really surprised.
Well, if we can find a common ground,
Henry, I thought this is the one you said, Steve, thank you. We can agree on this one. Let's keep on moving.
well, I hope I'm not going back on some comment I made to you, but I don't recall that.
No.
I don't want to preempt the states. I see what you're trying to do. If we didn't have this amendment at all, the states are moving along quite fine. They're moving to the New York standard. They may even do better than the New York standard. But what you're trying to accomplish is a worthwhile goal, and I support your goal, but I don't believe in Washington having all the answers to all the problems. I think states ought to be able to adopt laws that protect their own people.
Wait a second.
Well, the states can't adopt an FDA.
Mr. Chairman, this is a pretty important discussion, because when we end up doing Mr. Dingell's food and drug safety bill, there'll be an issue that will come before the committee regarding electronic pedigree. And the standard for which I am working with now is the California standard. So are you about to say, Steve, with regard to electronic pedigree, if I'm not going to use New York as a standard, then I guess we're not going to use California standard in electronic pedigree.
You want to discuss it now, and or do you want to pull it back and then let's see if we can work something out? Or if you want to stay with your amendment,
if the
let's
gentleman,
stay with your amendment.
All right.
What do you want to do?
Well, I want to work with you on this because I think it's something that you and I ought to be able to work through. I'll withdraw the amendment in exchange for the pledge for the chairman and you and I to figure this one out.
I accept your withdrawing of the amendment, and I will make every effort to work it out.
All right, I accept that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I withdraw the amendment. You ask unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment.
Unanimous consent not required. The gentleman withdraws his amendment.